Welcome to Recovery Sunday, Trinity's first in 9 years. Recovery from what? Recovery from following our own will instead of following the will of God. As Franciscan Richard Rohr explains, recovery's for everybody because we're all addicted to our own stubborn way of thinking. Recovery is for all of us, not just for the chemically addicted. What belief, habit, or grudge might you stubbornly be hanging on to? How might giving that up to God make your life better? Before I share a bit of my own recovery story, I'd like to give thanks to the volunteers participating in this service. Most are working an active program of recovery, but others are supportive of friends and loved ones in recovery. I'm also grateful to the philosophy of the 12 Steps, the recovery ministries of the Episcopal Church, and the Order of Daughters of the King. Here's a simple prayer, both humble and empowering, that changed my life. For his sake, I am but one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. What I can do, I ought to do. What I ought to do, by the grace of God, I will do. God, what will you have me do? That's the motto of the Daughters of the King. Since 1885, Episcopal women belonging to this order have vowed to wear this distinctive cross and to live lives centered on prayer, service, and evangelism. I had been a daughter for 6 years when I found myself in June of 2009 in a tidy little dorm room at the beautiful Mercy Retreat Center in Auburn, asking God with all my heart what God would have me do. To my great joy and relief, I was attending my pre-ordination retreat with 3 dear seminary friends, along with Bishop Barry Beisner and Archdeacon Ernie Lewis. After 5 years of grueling ordination process, including 3 years of extremely challenging seminary classes, I graduated with my Master of Divinity and was actually giddy with excitement anticipating my ordination to the transitional diaconate here at Trinity Cathedral the next week. Finally, I was able to relax after 5 years of intense judgment and introspection. I gave myself wholly to God. Seeking direction in my ordained life, I prayed over and over the ending of that DOK motto. God, what will you have me do? God, what will you have me do? I was hoping for geographic or demographic direction. I received neither. God's answer was shocking. I heard just 2 words that shook me to my core. No way would I do that. I stayed very quiet the next day, not telling anyone those 2 words, that I had heard God speak to me. The next night, the final night of the retreat, I returned to my room and timidly asked God the same question, hoping for a better answer. God, what will you have me do? Back came the same 2 words. That's not a ministry, God, I blurted angrily. That's a punishment. So what were God's 2 words to me? Quit drinking. And what were my 2 words for God? Hell no. I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't a party girl. I never drank in bars. I'd never even done a shot or even had a hangover. I never crashed a car or lost a job or ruined a relationship. I was a secret drinker, a highly functional alcoholic. I drank wine from the time I came home from work as a teacher and from the time I'd finished studying in the evening as a seminary student until I fell asleep. No need to hide bottles. I drank boxed wine, so classy, never counting drinks. No one knew, not my husband, our daughters, my parents, my friends. I suspect my dog knew. Wine had become my secret friend, my reward after a long day of work or school. Quitting drinking wasn't a ministry direction for me, it was a punishment. So I remained royally angry with God, stewing in my own juices, living in the spirit of hell no. I was like Jacob, wrestling mightily with God in the story from Genesis we heard this morning. God wrestled with Jacob all night, even dislocating Jacob's hip to wear him down, until Jacob finally gave up the fight, both accepting and returning God's blessing. Well, God and I wrestled for lots longer than one night. But once I confided in my longtime therapist that God and I had exchanged 2 words each, quit drinking, hell no, I began my journey toward sobriety, grudgingly, angrily, pridefully, resentfully. Go to AA meetings, my therapist urged. You'll learn a lot by listening to others. Me? Go to meetings? I was a public figure in my community. I was too good for AA. I wasn't like those drunks. But God wouldn't give up on me. We wrestled until one day in August, quite unintentionally, I went one day without drinking, then another, then another. When I told my therapist I'd quit drinking, mission accomplished, she still urged me to go to meetings, especially women's meetings. I again told her no. Not hell no. I was softening. It was more like, no thank you. But God didn't give up on me. Nevertheless, God persisted. So, on December 1st of 2009, 11 days before my ordination to the priesthood, I turned the knob of that first door of many I would enter, and I stepped into my first room of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was greeted warmly, offered a seat, and found my true spiritual home. I met people in those rooms with dramatic stories of near death, of detox, hospitalization, rehab, physical and spiritual death they'd faced. And then I heard amazing stories for them of resurrection to new life. At first I thought I didn't belong there because my story of what it was like was so very wimpy. But at every meeting I heard something that connected me to the others. Stories about guilt, shame, powerlessness, desperation, secrecy, isolation. When Jacob finally gave in to the will of God, he proclaimed, I saw God face to face. I began to see God face to face in those 12-step rooms, when at every meeting, I witnessed people sharing their stories of transformation and their commitment to a daily program of honesty and integrity. Very slowly, I felt my anger and resentment fade away. Instead of feeling ashamed of being an alcoholic, I began feeling proud of being a sober person. Instead of craving wine and isolating myself, I accepted God's gift as I savored clear thinking, abundant energy, and a true ability to do all such good works as God hath prepared for me to walk in, as we say in Rite One. So instead of a punishment, quitting drinking had indeed become a ministry for me. In today's gospel, we heard from Noah, a persistent widow wears down a stubborn judge who finally stops fighting and gives in to her pleas for justice. God is my persistent widow in my life, never giving up on me, always nudging me to be the person God knows I can be. Now, I'm a 3rd-generation cradle Episcopalian and a real church lady this entire century. But it wasn't until 2009 when I entered those rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I truly witnessed the transformative power of God's healing love. Millions of people for over 87 years now in every country of the world have experienced God's healing love by working the 12 steps with a sponsor, attending meetings, being of service, knowing they need to give away what they've learned in sobriety in order to keep it. Whatever has possessed their spirits, whatever has harmed them, whatever has separated them from God, be it alcohol, drugs, food, gambling, love, sex, debt, technology, codependency, they've learned to stop wrestling with God, to go limp safely and fall into God's loving embrace. It's not magic, but it is kind of miraculous. The 12 steps are for everyone, not just for folks with garden variety habits or dramatic addictions. The 12 steps suggest a program of recovery, one day at a time. Steps 1, 2, and 3 teach us to give up our will to God's will. Steps 4, 5, and 6 tell us to own up to what we realize was harming us. Steps 7, 8, and 9 teach us to make up by making amends to the people we may have harmed. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are my favorites. They teach us to grow up by promptly admitting when we're wrong, by keeping in touch with God through prayer and meditation, and by sharing our spiritual transformation with others. My involvement in the recovery ministries of the Episcopal Church since 2010 has opened my eyes to what the transformative power of God's healing love can do in and around our church communities. I urge you to check out a display I've set up in the courtyard to peruse recovery ministry resources on the functional alcoholic, problem gambling, and enabling, because there are many people trying to help those who are struggling. There are also some free resources, so I hope you'll consider taking them. Our church has been blessed with this ministry since 1995. It's time it was well known. I have been told that in every pew, in every Episcopal Church service, there is likely someone who is struggling or has struggled with an addiction or some kind of harmful habit. There is also likely someone whose heart is hurting, knowing someone they love is struggling, or someone they love has died in their struggle with addiction. But also in our pews are people who are proud of loved ones who have found and kept their sobriety. And to be certain, there are people in our pews today with many years of sobriety, people whose experience, strength, and hope are an inspiration to me and can be an inspiration to you too. So now I'm the persistent widow. I really am a widow in real life, and I've become quite persistent. And now I'm asking you what God will have you do. God never gives up on us, so please don't give up on yourself. With God's help, with God's loving, healing, forgiving grace, we can all take simple steps to become the healthy, honest people God sees us to be. Finally, I invite you to consider becoming involved in helping us create a sobriety support ministry here at Trinity, open to all. What might we create together? Not therapy, not sponsorship, not 12-step meetings, but maybe sober social events, a book group, a prayer and meditation group. I leave you to ponder what God is calling you to do to become the best, the healthiest, the happiest, the most honest version of yourself that God sees every day, but you might be refusing to see. I pray that when you hear God whispering to you to do God's will, your answer won't be my rude hell no, or even a polite no thank you. I pray that when you hear God's call, you'll be moved to answer with something between yes please and hell yeah. Amen.